people listening out here, they want to grow, they want to be the new me, but their families and, the people that are closest to them have known them for 20, 30 years to be that person. How would you suggest people, if they're really wanting to step out and be that person? Because a lot of us are dictated by how our family sees us, and when we're growing, they start to say, hey, that you that's growing isn't the you that I know you as, so please come back to being that you that I know you as. Um, how could you make a suggestion for all of us people out here that are wanting to like grow, but have these people that we love so much and dear that are in our environments, wanting us to be the person that they know us as?
Yeah, I love that question. I'd love to share a small delusional opinion on that. And first, I'll definitely say what I'm about to say is way easier to say than to actually do. I think what you're talking about, honoring and allowing ourselves to really embody our authentic self, which inevitably is never who our family thinks we are, because hopefully we've grown from the time we were a child. Hopefully we've encountered more of ourself. If not, it's a pretty scary story. So I think it's a progressive journey, but nonetheless, I think there is a very painful sense of betrayal that we have to be willing to encounter, feel, not run from, not hide from, not escape, but there's a proverbial dragon we must face. It's not the sort of dragon that we slay. That'd be easy. Just kill the dragon. Don't have to deal. I think it's a dragon that we have to allow to consume us. It feels as though I'm betraying my family because I'm not being who they expect me to be, and I'm not meeting their emotional needs by providing the sense of who they taught me to be. So when we betray that, the feeling, the ickiness that we have inside, the uncomfortability, the awkwardness, and of course the stories we make up about they're not approving us, they're mad at us. Sometimes they are, but nonetheless, there are stories. All of that stuff, to just allow it to happen, it's like standing there looking at the dragon and saying, bite me. It feels as though we're going towards a certain death, but just like the newborn sliding through the birth canal who thinks it's going towards a certain death, what we're most afraid of, I believe, is usually the birth canal into a greater version of our life. So I think when we allow the feelings of I'm betraying my family, and we have that shame inside, the fear, and that terrified part of us that feels like we won't belong, we have to allow that to be. It feels like death, and of course, to our reactive ego, if it feels like death, we assume it will kill us, and indeed, it does kill us. It puts a very appropriate death in place for who we used to be. Truth is, who we used to be, it died. It's probably been dead for a long time. We've just been denying it. Denial is the first stage of grief. We've been kind of carrying around the dead corpse, trying to make everybody happy, and we wonder, why does that wear me out? Well, if you're carrying around a 180-pound corpse, of course it's going to wear you out. But if you drop the corpse, have a funeral for who we used to be. And yeah, there's grief to that. Hell yeah. It's like if we showed up for our own funeral, it would be really sad to see how other people are sad about the loss of us. So in other words, other people will have their sadness, their anger, their fear that who we were has died. But it had to die in order to make room for who we really are in this moment to be born. So we have to be willing to experience a lot of grief, a sense of betrayal. And it's hard to, grief is hard to go through. But grief that we don't know is there is really hard to go through. One of the reasons why we have funerals for our loved ones who go through a physical death is so that we have a context to kind of channel our grief. It's like, okay, we know there's grief here and there's a funeral to symbolize it. And it's a rite of passage of moving on to what's next for both the dead person and the alive people. But when we don't know, part of us is dead, and we don't know that at some level, no matter how subconscious or unconscious, other people are grieving the loss of who we used to be. When we don't know all that grief is there, it's really hard to grieve it. So actually, oftentimes I'll have clients draw pictures of their own funeral. You know, when you draw your 15-year-old self at a funeral with your family there as a way of creating a ritual to channel the grief that's been there, but it hasn't been able to go anywhere. It's like, okay, if your colon doesn't have a sensation that you got to have a bowel movement and you just don't feel it, you don't let it go because you don't know it's there. So I think it's the same thing with our grief.
You were not born to be a slave to the opinions of others. When you look outside of yourself for validation and confirmation that you're on the right path, you'll continue to be influenced by a million different people living inside of other people's limitations.